Okay, we're live. Our guest today is James Desborough, Green Jim. Welcome to the Red Room again, Green.
Hello?
Was it a year ago? It was less than a year ago.
It was less than a
I
year
don't
ago.
remember when we started doing the videos.
Well, we started almost a year ago, but it wasn't our first interview, not the second, so it was probably 10 months ago, maybe.
It's been a while, certainly.
Yeah.
It feels like a long time ago.
Yes, it was much longer than that. But you were, at the time, of course, already working on Whitechester.
Yeah, which is finally done.
Yeah. Yeah, at the time there was still a lot to do. I remember that. Okay, so let's go back to that time. When with the interview, I don't know. I don't think it was about Whitechester.
I know we talked about Whitechester.
We talked about Whitechester, yes, but I don't think it was about that. It was
it was one of the topics.
Yeah, it was just it wasn't the main subject because at the time there wasn't that much to tell about it.
No,
But,
might have been trying to drum up money, but that was all.
Yes,
It was when
that's it.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's the reason. Yeah, the Kickstarter, of course. Okay, so 10 months went by, or 11 months, and Whitechester was released.
I think
what,
we can. Yeah.
2 weeks ago? No, last month.
I don't know. Must be at least 2 weeks ago because the second set of hard copies arrived with me. That usually takes about 2 weeks. So.
Okay, so 2 weeks ago. We haven't got the hard copy yet, so I haven't started reading it. I don't like it.
I don't know.
If you have the hardcover copy going in the way, we're not going to see look at the PDF.
Yeah, that's fine. But it's too large a book to read it in PDF. It's even to browse it, it's too long.
Searchable
though. But I browsed through it a bit. So, I have already looked at some of it.
Yeah, well, you helped on it, so
yeah. Oh, that's good. Your the image is reflecting.
Okay. Let's see about that. Is that better?
Yeah, now it's okay.
There you go. See, now it looks backwards on mine.
Let's go. Okay, so let's start by talking about that because I don't know if
for people that don't know what Whitechester is about.
It's possible that some people that watch this don't know what.
Let's hope so.
Yeah, let's hope so. So, what is Whitechester?
Whitechester is a city crawl adventure set in an alternative 17th century, early modern period, so nice and compatible with Lamentations of the Flame Princesses, typical sort of setting. In this world, there's always been a kind of background amount of magic, sort of deniable stuff, minor miracles, the kind of things that people actually believed in back then. But then a series of comets, 2 of which were real, pass over the world, and then a third one passes over, and in the wake of that one, the dead rise from their graves. Now, England had just come out of its civil war, so there were a lot of people who were experienced in fighting. They managed to put down these dead for the most part, but one city was completely overrun, a fictional city named Whitechester, which is found in the south of England. And there, what they did was they forced the dead into the city and then just walled it up. And then sometime later, they have decided that, we've got this whole city there lost, and it's full of the dead, and we need to do something with it. So let's use it as a prison. So they just ship people that would otherwise be hung or sent off to some remote corner of the world into the city instead, in the faint sort of hope that maybe eventually people will survive there long enough to clear out the dead and restore the city. And it's 5e compatible, it's Morkborg compatible, it's compatible with my custom set of 5e rules called Grimdark, and it's compatible with OSR gaming.
Okay, so you get an overview of what Winchester is. You chose this timeline because you wanted to be compatible with Lamentations, or is there another reason?
Partially, but also because I'm interested in these parts of history. One of my ancestors fought under Cromwell and married into Cromwell's family, so it's an interesting period. There was also a lot of political upheaval at that point in history and religious upheaval. So it's just interesting because there's so many different factions and beliefs. And, we had gotten rid of our king and then we brought one back. So it's, a lot of disaffected, annoyed people. So you can have political dissidents thrown in, religious heretics thrown in, as well as your thieves and murderers and cut purses and all the rest. And I wanted black powder weapons to be a part of it, but I didn't want them to be completely overbearing. And so that period when it's mostly smoothbore muskets and, the flintlock is invented, but a lot of the military is still using matchlocks, so it keeps firearms controllable within a light touch fantasy setting.
When I was writing those bits for it, I didn't immediately notice, but now that I've seen the whole thing, I have the feeling that the characters aren't supposed to live long lives. We go there, and just
they become one of the undead.
It's meant to be to tap into some of that old school sentiment, where things are more deadly, and so the characters are encouraged to be very careful, stealthy, sneaky, have backup plans, and so on. And I'm not a fan of the complete sort of meat grinder funnel experience in games, but I do think we've lost something in the kind of superheroics that you typically see in your standard 5th edition game. It's very challenging as a games master to create a challenge that genuinely threatens the players without going completely overboard and wiping them out too easily. So undead are normally low-level bad guys in most games. I think we've got a mix in this, and the suggestions for the systems to use also suggest that you make things a bit more deadly. But it's not meant to be unfair. It's just meant to be difficult and maybe to replicate the kind of things you see on Game of Thrones or The Walking Dead, where not really any characters are safe. Anyone could die at any time. And because new prisoners are constantly being thrown into the prison, if your character dies and you need a new character, it's really easy to just bring one in.
So it's possible to survive.
Yeah, difficult, but possible.
Yeah, as the city is closed and it's full of zombies. Even if the zombie isn't the most dangerous opponent, but there's lots of them.
Yeah, there's other things. It's nice to have a bit of variety. So.
I haven't checked that one yet. What is from this setting? What is real and what part of it is true?
So the divergent point is probably 1666. Which was called the Year of Miracles, but was also thought to be the Year of the Devil here in England. We had the plague that wiped out like a third of London. We had the Great Fire of London immediately following the plague. We were at war with Holland. Some people thought we'd offended God by bringing a king back, especially one with Catholic leanings. So a lot of that kind of background is rooted historically. But at the same time, because I've allowed certain low-level sorts of magic and alchemy and so on in the background, and ritual magic, it's an alternate setting in that is there, but it hasn't really affected history until this point, when, the dead rising from the grave around that year, that's going to increase the political turmoil and the religious fervor that was already there in reality. So I'm just writing an introductory adventure now, the second one that I promised on the fundraiser, and I found a historical judge who was sentencing people around that sort of time, and he was notoriously misogynistic, and he convicted a whole bunch of women on witchcraft without much in the way of evidence. But then if you take that judge and you put him within that context, suddenly him judging people for witchcraft and so on makes a lot more sense and becomes a lot more excusable, at least within the context. So little things like that are real and inform the world.
So we have some comments here on chat. So yes, so we have Griffith and we have Legion of Myth. It's Max, right? The one that uses Legion of Myth. Yeah. So Max is saying that got my copy of Whitechester.
Whitechester or Winchester?
Whitechester.
Whitechester, you see. Big book, man. I can't wait to dine into it. Well, it means dive.
He might want to eat it, I don't know.
He just needs a couple of hours. So and Griffith is asking if the game has supernatural elements. I think we just answered that.
Zombies, but not
Exactly.
not only zombies, I think.
Yeah,
We
there are other things.
Is there magic? Can we play a conjurer?
Yeah, you can. So, I mean, you can play it with default 5e rules, but throwing fireballs around and casting healing magic isn't really in keeping with the setting, which is why I recommend either using a sort of toned down OSR or Morkborg or my Grimdark rule sets, which are much grimmer and grittier. So magic exists. It has always been there, but it's in the background. It's not a big mover and shaker. I mean, if you look historically, someone like Dr. John Dee was court astrologer to Elizabeth I. So, magic and supernatural things were taken seriously in the real world, however real or not you happen to think they are. In this world, they're real, but not hugely powerful, or they require huge sacrifice. Or in the Grimdark rules, like clerics, instead of necessarily healing your health, they heal your morale. So having a prayer said over you makes you feel more confident, more protected, gives you greater reserves of willpower to draw upon. So
wait, Griffith
still kind of magic.
Griffith is asking to be more specific. Are there ghosts and spirits, and are the players able to interact with this?
There are ghosts and spirits because people believed in them very, very strongly at the time. You may run into the ghost of someone who is also a zombie.
Oh, that's interesting.
Because they're dead, so
exactly. The soul left the body, exactly.
Yeah.
And we have another comment here from Max. So about the difficulty. So difficulty is good. GMs are supposed to challenge the PCs. Total party kills happen, but that's not the intent. I hope. It's his comment.
Yeah, it's not a fuck you dungeon. It's not something that should just arbitrarily kill you out of hand. But as long as you're smart and careful and don't roll really badly, you should be okay.
But I think when you're giving the example of Game of Thrones, it's curious that people seems to like TV shows and movies when everybody can die now, but when they go to their role-playing games, they don't want to die.
Yeah, I think people are over-invested too early in their characters. I think it's better to say, oh, I've got a neat idea for a character. Let's see how it plays out. And then if that character survives, you can build it out and add details. I think that's a better way to go about it.
Yeah, it's too much investment writing whole stories, whole background stories for characters that might.
Yeah, make the story as you play, not beforehand.
Exactly.
Yes, especially in this kind of game. It's not. This is not Vampire. So about again about the realistic aspect of this. It takes place in a city, and there's a lot of research about stuff at the time. So how things work, what are we going to find if you rob a store, if you enter a house, all that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's mostly historical. I've made things a little bit ahistorical. In all my games, I aim for something that I call plausibility, which is a sort of compromise between realism and what's necessary to make the game work and be good and fun. Like our idea of fantasy taverns and pubs and inns and so on isn't at all like what they were in real life. But in this, I've made them lean a little bit more towards our fantasy understanding, because those buildings are still there, even if they're not inhabited. And heating and lighting was a huge problem in this period. Like most houses weren't heated, or they just had the one fireplace to heat the whole house. So you have to kind of work around that. And it was Benjamin Franklin who invented the iron stove, I think, and he didn't do that for a while after this, into the 1700s. But there were braziers and there were things that were similar to stoves, so I've called them stoves, even though they're not. So it's all about striking that compromise where it's comprehensible to a modern player, somewhat true to the history, but it's that compromise that lets you play and have fun within that setting, and maybe learn a thing or two as well along the way.
The kind of things that were difficult to come by in the time probably are also a danger for the characters, and also because it's not it's a city that has been overrun by zombies for quite a long time, I think.
Yeah, and the panic when it first happened.
Yeah, so there's no food, there's all that, so you can also die because you can't feed yourself.
Yeah, or find clean water. There's a river that runs through the city, but obviously it's clogged with dead bodies and the undead, and nobody's been able to clean anything in forever. So there's all the runoff from the industrial area, well, proto-industrial area. So you're going to have to collect rainwater, or find a way to treat it in a way that works. Food supplies, there are stores of food throughout the city. A lot of it will have gone rotten. A lot of it's not going to be particularly palatable, but you can find food and preserves. And if you find things like sugar and spices, that's probably worth more to you to trade those than to keep them, because they're rare anyway in this period, and fantastically rare in Whitechester. Same with any sort of medicines or anything you might find in an apothecary. And they're of dubious quality at the best of times. So
what are the chances of finding NPCs that are alive?
So there's a few little survivor groups here and there that have decided not to join the main survivor group. Where you enter, a group of survivors have walled off that section of the city. With barricades to keep the dead out. And there's some sort of semblance of normal life there, kind of, with a few nasty spins to it, but they're running low on supplies. So it's increasingly becoming necessary to send people out beyond the barricades to look for food, or to trap rats and rabbits and pigeons and anything else you can find out there, just to keep people alive. When you're sent in with a couple of water skins of small beer and a pack of hardtack biscuits, but the people already there are likely to take that off you when you come in. Earn your place, then you can eat.
We have two more questions. Griffith is making our job easier. So first he asked, and I have a cat sitting on top of the computer.
Of course.
As long as she doesn't type. Yeah. So Griffith asked if there's a map of the city.
So
which I think there is.
It's already a 500-page book, so it's already a hefty tome. So we couldn't put maps of every single location into it, but they're described in such a way that you should be able to find your way around fine. The city itself does have a map. I'm trying to find it. And each sub area has a map as well. So There we go. So that's
Mhm.
the map of the city and of the first area up by the cathedral. And that's on roughly the same sort of 5-foot scale. So you can have a rough idea of.
When there were living people there, how many people were living in the Whitechester?
So there probably would have only been 6,000 to 10,000 at the time. It's kind of modeled after the cities of Winchester and Salisbury of the same period. And in the area of Winchester, which is Hampshire, which is where I live in the UK, the cities there were in a bit of a decline because they'd been big into the wool trade, and then that was shifting to the continent. So the population had been maybe twice what it was when this happened. And then they would have lost about, well, not as bad as London, maybe a quarter or a fifth of the population to plague. And then all those plague victims rise as zombies and eat a whole bunch of people, and everyone else flees. So there's probably somewhere in the region of 2,000 to 3,000 undead within the confines of the city, roaming around or trapped in the buildings.
It's a lot of undead to
Yeah.
face.
So Griffith says he loves games with city maps, so he probably will just get it to look at the maps.
If it sells well, it's been a bit slow, but I think that's because of the price and the time of year and a whole bunch of other things. If it continues to sell well, I will commission someone to do a proper full-scale map.
Besides that, there's plans for more things for Whitechester.
So this second sort of slight adventure, small starter adventure that I've got coming out, but it's not the sort of thing you can necessarily heavily supplement. It's a book you can just pick up and play. That was the aim. So it doesn't need a lot of adventures or supporting material. One thing I didn't really manage to get into or have enough space to get into was there would be old Roman sewers underneath. So I would like to detail the underworld, if you will, in some sort of future smaller book, much smaller book.
So is this the kind of thing that you can just pick up and start playing, or you have to prepare something? I mean, read something of some of it.
I read the introductory parts, I guess, but from there, I mean, you just need to present the city to them. It tells you what's there. You've got tables for random zombies to turn up if you want. You've got details on the various characters that you might run into. So you could just pick up and play. You know, you're thrown into a prison. What do you want to do? Yeah, basically, I mean, better than that, but yeah.
Let me just answer, because Griffith is asking where can I get it, and I'll put the link on social media. We will share that after. I can't share it now because the cat is sitting on my left.
Post-mort.com for the PDF. That's the best place to get it if you want me to get the money, or lulu.com, though there are links on my website too.
We'll share it when we share the interview also.
Yes, right now it's a bit difficult.
No, it's very difficult.
Is it very cold over there?
Not really.
No, it's not. Unlike the opposite. Today was
It's just raining a lot.
Yeah, it was. It has been raining.
But I know it's. I work with people in the UK, and I've seen them in meetings all completely frozen and with a lot of coats on.
Yeah, it's thawed a bit, but it has been horribly cold.
I'm trying to put it back to the comments then. Yeah, take sure.
I will take the cat now.
One way to solve the problem.
She is angry. So very.
It's interesting, actually. There's a bunch of cross-cultural stories about like the Prophet Muhammad and a Japanese courtier and a saint, all of whom cut their robe because a cat was sat on it, so they didn't disturb the cat. They could get away. So
you can't disturb the cats. The cats
no.
Yeah,
leave the kitties alone.
Exactly, they are divinities.
Okay. So when you start, you are supposed to. So you give some directions about levels of characters, the level of characters, and the number of player characters that should be in a party.
Yeah. So in this introductory adventure, rather than the main book, I've suggested that you each create 2 characters and they're all thrown into the prison at the same time, just so that you have a backup, just in case, because a lot of players aren't going to be used to the style of game that's the way I intend it to be played. I mean, once it's out, you can't stop people doing whatever they want with it, and I wouldn't have it any other way. But yeah, it's probably good to have a backup until you understand how things work. But I would start right down at the lowest level. I would start level 1. I mean, you could start higher level, be a more known criminal or whatever else that's being thrown in there. But I think the best experience with most level and class games is levels 1 to 6. That's the sweet spot for most of these games. So I would start low, so you have plenty of time.
But I kind of feel like playing Whitechester, at least for me, is going to be like playing a computer game on survival level. I always avoid.
I think it'd be one step down from the really difficult. Yeah.
Yeah, you have to pick up supplies and wood too.
Exactly.
Probably not a role-playing game, but more of a survival game. Probably. Comparing with the computer game, of course.
Yes, we have another question from Griffith that I didn't that I skipped over. It was where is it? You guys are talking too much.
City Man.
No, it was about the rules. If it is a self-contained game system, we already answered that, I believe, but
yeah, it's not a self-contained game system. You'll need a copy of, well, whatever your preferred system is. I mean, to a degree, it's systemless because it's got descriptions for everything. So if you're pretty good at improvising, you could run it with, I don't know, Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay would work pretty well. Yeah, pretty much anything that suits you. But I would definitely lean towards the harder dark fantasy stuff, maybe basic role playing, one of the Ring Quests rule sets, perhaps. That open version of Rolemaster that's used for Against the Dark Master, that would probably work quite well. But yeah, it's written for Morkborg, OSR, 5e, and my custom 5e rule set.
Yeah, the Grimdark is just an adaptation of the 5th edition rules, right?
Yeah, making them a bit more challenging.
Edition, it's probably better to use Grimdark, or else it's probably not a challenging game in this case. Not challenging enough, at least. So there was a Kickstarter, the one we talked about.
Indiegogo, I prefer to use Indiegogo, though there's less and less reasons to choose it over Kickstarter as time goes on, but it's still slightly better, I think.
Did the Kickstarter cover the expenses you had?
If I hadn't gotten really ill and wasted most of a year, then it would have. But as things stood, it ended up costing me more. Let's put it that way, more than I raised. Just mostly because I was so ill for so long, and I had to bring in people to help, including you. And it was only right to pay those who allowed me to pay them. So, you know.
Well, let's talk about that, because that's the darkest part of this story.
The grimmest.
Yes, you could say that.
It was later. I don't. When we talked last time. Well, when we talked at the channel last time, I don't think you were. I don't think that sickness was revealed yet. I don't.
It wasn't. Yeah, at least when we had the interview, I think you already knew that you were having issues, but I don't think you really knew
not really sick.
The full picture.
When did that happen?
So almost straight away after the crowdfunder launched, really, or finished. I can't remember which one. But yeah, almost straight away. so we hadn't been able to go to like dentist or optician or any of that stuff for ages because of COVID. And then there was a lull, and we had an offer from the optician to get a free eye test. So we thought, let's go in. So we did, and had my eyes tested, and the optician suddenly got very, very serious and concerned, and a bunch of blood vessels in the back of my eyes had burst due to high blood pressure. I didn't necessarily appreciate quite how serious that was at the time, but they got me rushed into hospital like the following day, more tests. And then the doctor was like, well, okay, you're going to have to stay here. Your blood pressure is dangerously high. I think it maxed out at something like 260 over 100 and I forget the other one. It's the 260 that was scary. Not quite a world record, but pretty high. So they stuck me in a wheelchair, apparently worried I would stroke out or have a heart attack any minute, and ran me up into the wards and pumped me full of drugs that made me very, very sick, but brought my blood pressure down. There was lots of tests and so on. And it turned out I had renal arterial stenosis, which is like a heart attack, but for your kidneys. So one of the arteries to my kidney had narrowed. And so blood pressure was building up behind that and then suddenly releasing. So my blood pressure was going really, really, really high, then suddenly dropping really, really low and causing all kinds of stress and damage, including the damage to my eyes. And if this hadn't been treated, I could have gone blind, had a stroke, had an aneurysm, had a heart attack, my kidney could have died, whole bunch of nasty stuff. So yeah, all kinds of scans and things to find that. They managed to get my blood pressure down, put me on a whole bunch of pills and sent me home, but I was still very, very ill all year, basically. Essentially bedbound, lots of nasty swelling, pain, backache where my kidneys were swelling up, all kinds of horrible shit. It was just a nasty, nasty, horrible time. And a whole bunch of people stepped up to help me at least try and get the book done in some kind of order. Some point in the year, I think towards the end of summer or beginning of summer, I'm not sure, I went in for an operation and I had a stent put into my kidney. So I'm now technically a cyborg, I guess. Unfortunately, that hasn't solved the issue. It's meant I can take some of the stronger drugs to deal with the blood pressure thing, and it saved the kidney from dying, but it hasn't solved the blood pressure issue. So I'm still waiting a year later to get this really sorted out. But I'm a lot better than I was. But yeah, I did. I could have just keeled over and died when my blood pressure was that high. It was, could have happened like that without me ever realizing what was going on. So yeah, it's not been a good year. I put on a bunch of weight. All my muscles kind of gone blur. And it's, I guess it's appropriate to have a brush with mortality when you're working on something about the undead, but it's not something I'd recommend. I'm going to work hard next year on getting fit again and well, and taking some more time to smell the roses and appreciate stuff.
Did the doctors figure out what is the reason for the high blood pressure?
They're still not entirely sure. It may be that so your body kind of gets set at a certain level of blood pressure. And because this was probably going on for a long time, my body has probably gotten accustomed to having this massively high blood pressure. And my blood pressure was always on the high side of normal anyway. So I just run hot, essentially, is part of it. So we still don't really know, but we can tackle it better with drugs and things now. So I've got to go on to beta blockers is the new one, but you can be on that long term without it having massive horrible effect. So
yeah, I think most of my family has high blood pressure. I have low blood pressure.
Got to be contrary.
So the delay from the all those problems, how much was it? How many months was this delayed?
So I hoped to finish, I think by the end of spring, beginning of summer, and instead it went all the way on to the beginning of winter, really. So I guess 6 months late. That's not the worst I've been with a crowdfunded project. That was probably the Tales of Gore project, but that was due to the artist's life kind of falling apart and me having decided to use one artist, which was not a good idea. It looks fantastic, but it was a huge delay.
The whole thing, or just the art book?
Oh, it was it was the same artist. He did everything.
Okay.
But with this one, yeah, we managed to keep it to about, I think, about 6 months late. I'd written a third of it before I crowdfunded, and I'd worked out the timing, and I'd accounted for other issues. Yeah, I suffer from depression. I just hadn't hadn't counted on this going wrong.
Yeah, I remember there was a lot of the background. It was already written, maybe not finished, but the
Yeah,
basics of it were there already.
I knew every location I wanted. I knew the different areas of the city. I'd written the introductory sections, most of it, the cathedral area, and some of the adjoining areas. Or like I say, about a third of it I'd written. 200 pages, because it would have to be edited and cut down after that anyway. And that really didn't take me that long, but then the rest did. So.
Yeah, we had another question from Judd. I guess he wants to know what everybody wants to know is what's next for you, Grim. So,
well, like I said, I'm gonna take things easier this coming year, concentrate on getting fit and well a bit. So you probably, well, I say you probably won't see as much from me, but every time I say that, I end up still churning stuff out. I just can't help myself, I guess. But I've got a bunch of stuff to catch up on from when I was ill, like the gazetteers for the Tabletopless game. We've got a whole ton of material I need to put together and put out for that, because the girls and guys have all been massively supportive from there, and I managed to keep that going despite the illness. So I want to get that done. And I've got a vague idea of doing something called Rapid Prototype, which will be just slamming out quick and dirty ideas for games as part of my Autopsy magazine, collected together with articles and other bits and pieces, just to see what ideas people like. Because I get frustrated because I have all these ideas and I can't get them out fast enough, So that might be one way of tackling that.
There was a video you did not too long ago where we were talking about what I'm going to do next, and you didn't really answer it, so I guess you don't have an answer yet.
Yeah, not 100%.
I guess I feel after this project, you also wouldn't feel like, oh, I'm gonna do doing a big project right away.
Yeah, and well, there's this other adventure that I promised to finish, and if I have obligations to people, I can't rest until I've sorted it out.
So I suppose that selling books isn't probably your major income source.
It is actually. I also get disability assistance, and my wife is very, very forgiving, which helps. But yeah, that's the other reason to keep banging stuff out. You have to, if you want to make any kind of living at this, you have to keep putting material out. Otherwise, people just think you've died and lose interest. So.
Unless they think you died and then you come back, that could be interesting. You convince them you actually died.
Yeah, if the next book is just brains over and over again, you'll know what's happened.
I'm getting a taste of that. If there's no, I've been releasing too much, but if there's no release, I don't see anything. I don't see people buying, so it's
yeah. But the upside is every time you do release something, you don't just sell that; you sell some other stuff as well. So.
Yeah, that's a process, and it carries over to other stuff. Um, whatever.
Well, I
What
think we
else?
can talk. Well, it doesn't matter that we, of course, we can talk that we have Grim here, but let's talk a bit about AI art.
Yes,
Because we've
that's
seen, yeah,
the subject
you're
of the
right.
moment.
It's been very, yeah, it's a hot subject at the moment, and yeah,
I haven't yet.
no,
I wasn't able to check what did you do with AI art in Whitechester. I know you used something because you talked about it, but I didn't check it.
Yeah. So I guess I'm kind of a filthy centrist on AI art. I just don't think any of the arguments against it are coherent, but I like to support artists. So for me, what I'm probably going to do is I'm going to keep my art budget roughly what it is now for each release, and I will hire real human flesh and blood people to do that art, and then I will supplement it with AI art. And I'm not completely devoid of design skills, so I will fix it and alter it and change it slightly so that there's still some human input there. But I can't really stand in judgment over anyone else that uses it, except when they use AI art that just doesn't look right. So avoid hands for the time being. It's just like,
it seems
so
the art is well, the AIs, not the art, is already understanding that, because I see lots of hands like this.
Yeah, it's getting better. I mean,
so the problem is the fingers.
I didn't always want to be a game designer. I wanted to be a lumberjack. Now, I originally studied art. I did art at college, and I did it at a pre-university course before I decided that I've had my passion for this beaten out of me by the educational system. But there's lots of artists that avoid certain parts of anatomy, like including hands or feet, especially feet are difficult to draw. But as an artist, you are inspired by other artists and you learn by copying from them. So materially, what is the difference between me taking inspiration from another artist or tracing over a comic book character to learn how that artist draws their anatomy and their dynamic stances and how their method for cross-hatching? What is the difference between that and an AI synthesizing a new image from other people's images? Because that's basically what we do, and AI does that. And if we recognize that collage is a real form of art, a whole bunch of 60s pop art was collage, and that's stuff literally taken out and recontextualized. A newspaper picture, a billboard, photographs, bits of cloth, whatever. It's something that someone else has done, and then you put it together as a new art piece. And then again, you can relate that to what AI is doing. Neither comparison is perfect, but I don't think you can put your finger on something genuinely actually wrong that AI is doing, because it's what artists have done since forever. I think the way all of this is going, a lot of this is going, is that we're going to bifurcate. And on the one side, you're going to have machine produced, automated, 3D printed stuff, which will be cheap and plentiful and will supply what you need. And then there'll be the human made stuff. The people will place a premium on the ineffable human quality, or what the Japanese call wabi-sabi, which is perfection in imperfection. It's like Etsy exists. People still hand knit, even though there's machine looms. I think that's where we're going to end up with all this. We're going to value human input, human craft, human ability and involvement, but we're also going to want cheap, fast, easy, effective stuff.
We have that on crafts. If you buy, you can buy a knockoff, made in China, but if you buy a piece, or it's a pair of shoes or a jewelry or handmade by an artisan, it's a lot more expensive.
Yeah. People are surprised at how much time goes into hand knitting a sweater or something. Yeah, if you were to charge what it's actually worth, you're talking hundreds of pounds.
Exactly. I was well. It's obvious. I was annoyed because people were taking this almost in the witch hunt, another witch hunt.
Yeah,
you get to burn.
I understand, right? I understand that they're threatened, and as a writer, I'm also threatened. I don't know if you've looked at ChatGPT.
Yeah.
It's amazing, and that's handling the written word, which maybe is easier to handle than art. I don't know, but you can give it prompts for just about anything. You can ask it to generate a D&D monster for you, and it will. It's crazy good. So in a way, I'm more threatened but less worried, I suppose. I just try to be zen about the whole thing. You can't fight it; it's over already. So all this no AI stuff no, you're going to have to find a way to incorporate it into your process, use it alongside what else you do, because the cat is out of the bag.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people already doing that. Those are the ones that weren't complaining.
Yeah.
Fact, those are the ones who are singing praises for AI, not us, because, well, I don't care. It's useful.
Yeah. I like I say, I understand all the different points of view. I mean, there's a lot of people now who will be able to put out fully illustrated RPG books who couldn't have a hope of affording to do that before. So do we want to live in a world where those people never publish or never get the eyeballs that they otherwise would? Isn't more stuff better? Well, I mean, Sturgeon's law, 99% of anything is crap, but even so, the more stuff, there's that 1% grows as well. So yeah, I understand people's fears, but I just don't think there's anything to be done about it. And if history shows us anything, it's that we adapt and we do new things and we incorporate these tools.
Exactly. Let me see. I have another question here from Griffiths. How long does it take you normally to write a book, to make a book?
It depends.
Probably layout as well.
Yeah, it depends. I wrote Urban Fairy in one day and laid it out in another day. Just like stream of consciousness, it just came out of me. Other times it's a struggle. The most words I've written in one day is 10,000, but some days you don't write anything. There's just no way to know.
This one took much longer than what you expected. So what, a year? Maybe?
Yeah, this probably took a year, though I originally came up with the idea in 2013.
So, just the idea, right?
Yeah, well, so there's this thing that happens when you're a creative, in that lots of people have the same or similar ideas at the same time, and it gets awkward. So as I was putting together my original ideas for this, a new comic strip came out in 2000 AD called Defoe 1666, which is almost exactly the same idea, apart from the prison city. So there's like a zombie hunter general, and he has a gang of mercenaries around him, and they slaughter the undead. Even the time period is exactly the same. A lot of the ideas are the same, and I was just like, I can't put anything out. It looks too similar. But that story has diverged wildly from where I wanted to go, so I feel okay about doing it now.
10 years later.
Yeah. Just wait. Be patient.
That's very annoying. Like, oh, this person beat me by a week.
Well, so the other big example of this is Gareth Michael Skarka, who's the guy supposedly behind Far West, though it still hasn't come out yet. I had an idea for a sort of samurai Western RPG at the same time as him, and I decided not to do it. And I probably should have, because his still isn't out, God knows how many years later. And we had a similar idea for 60s sort of spy-fi game. And I went ahead and put that one out. So that was Agents of Swing. But he had a very similar idea at the same time. It just happens.
I didn't know that Far West was. I thought it was a Western game.
It's an East meets West sort of game. So like came from Kung Fu, martial arts and six guns. My idea is a bit different in that it's an alternate history where the Chinese discover and settle America from the West Coast inward instead of Europeans settling it from the East Coast inward. Someday I'll get around to it.
So it's still, it will still be.
I did have a playtest set of rules, and we did run a couple of games with it, but it's that years and years ago now.
Well, I have a question. It popped in my head.
Yeah, fine.
So, so are you planning on running Whitechester in tabletopless?
So you were asking earlier, what am I going to do next? One of the things I want to do next year is to start a project where I run one of everything. I've got shelves and shelves of gaming books that I've just read and absorbed but never played. And amongst those things that I'll do will probably be to run a game of Whitechester, at least in the introductory few sessions.
That's not tabletopless. That's game mastering.
Yeah, that would be separate.
I guess Whitechester and tabletopless could be interesting.
You play also fantasy, right?
Yeah.
We play on tabletopless at the moment. We play Vampire, which is very fitting with the whole erotic thing, that it becomes text rather than subtext, and a fantasy setting for 5e, because that's what people watch.
Yeah. Well, I guess zombies don't go well with everything.
I don't know, maybe.
Yeah, I don't think so.
We've had undead.
I think the problem there would be the time period, maybe.
Yeah, it would be difficult to get accurate 17th century dress for, and it would take far too long to get dressed and undressed.
Yeah.
So, all the ties and buckles. It's not good.
Not practical.
I think we are probably adapting Whitechester to a fantasy setting, to bastards.
Yeah, he said he's going to run.
Yeah, probably.
So
It should.
With wretched rules. Well, it's OSR.
Yeah, it's about the rules are there. It's
We just need to decide if you're going to do it in English and stream it, or just do it for our group.
I think being a zombie thing and the fact that most of it is written there already, I don't have to improvise a lot. Just describe what's already written. It's probably good for.
I haven't seen your Wretched Fantasy rules, but it should be completely compatible with the Wretched thing. I think someone asked earlier about whether you could play it with OD&D, or OSR basically covers that. So.
Exactly. And someone says it was Legion of Myth that they're going to try to do it with Forbidden Lands, even if it takes more work to adapt.
Yeah, that one is completely different. Yeah. We can just use the setting and the adventure itself, and not the statistics.
Rifts probably wouldn't work.
Yeah,
I never played Rifts.
I haven't had good experiences with it, but the rest of my play group have had good experiences with it.
I know people usually complain about the rules, right? It's rules heavy.
Rules heavy and quite primitive. There's a Savage Worlds version, but outside of Deadlands, I don't particularly get on with Savage Worlds either.
So another thing we can talk about, I think, is what do you think is going to happen now? Well, the future, it's very stupid to put it like that. Exactly. So let's talk about 1D&D and the future of role playing.
No, not yet.
I mean, there's a lot of fuss going on about that currently, and it's cute to see all the new 5th edition players get in a panic about a new edition and whether there'll be an OGL or not, because I've been through it from 3 to 3.5, 3.5 to 4, 4 to 5, seen it all before, really. I don't think even Wizards would be stupid enough to repeat the mistake that they did with 4th edition, where they really restricted it and cut it back. I think they're more likely to do what they did with 5th edition, which was they didn't release the open game license or the SRD for a while. The fact that they're in talks with third-party publishers, that's what they did last time, and they had a few third-party publishers come on board early to produce support materials so that they had a decent launch roster for the new edition. They say it's going to be backwards compatible, which rather limits how much they can change or restrict anything going forward. So I don't think there's a good reason for people to panic. And if they do the stupid nonsense that people are worrying that they are going to do, I think we'll just see what happened with 4th edition again. There will be people who stick with D&D, and some revised version of 5th edition might come out and do what Pathfinder did. The one aspect that does worry me a lot is this shift to online tools. So they're going to have their own virtual tabletop. Almost certainly they're going to have their own online store, which means they might unpartner from Drive-Thru RPG. They're going to try and nickel and dime people. I mean, monetizing players has always been difficult. And if you could monetize players, you'd be multiplying your revenue stream by like 4 times, because usually it's the games master who buys everything. You know, let's be honest, that's how it works out. So if you can monetize, I could understand the temptation to try and monetize players. Like, okay, you want your own custom mini within the game, it'll cost you this and that for these cosmetics or whatever. But they don't have a good track record on this. 4th edition was supposed to have a 3D virtual tabletop. Never happened. Yeah, that's the aspect that worries me, especially because if you get banned from their virtual tabletop, you're going to effectively be banned from playing D&D. Mm-hmm. And you'll lose your access to all these books that you've paid for and all these custom widgets. And systems like this always get abused. I mean, you can look at social media and how mass reporting and mass flagging knocks entirely innocent people offline, and it takes ages to get it sorted out, if you can even get it sorted out at all. So these parts of it worry me a lot.
Yes, me. Although I don't play D&D, so I wouldn't be affected, but yeah, it's not that I like.
Well, I play it with the Tabletopless crew, right? So it does affect me, even though I'm not the world's #1 fan of D&D. As an indie publisher, I kind of want them to fuck up. Because previously, like the dog end of 2nd edition, when they had no money and they were just screwing up left, right, and center with like Dragon Dice and too many tie-in novels, that's when you got Vampire and Mage, both of which outsold D&D for a while. Then when they screwed up with 4th edition, you had Pathfinder, which was sort of continuity 3rd edition, that rose up and had a lot of good material and so on. So D&D's troubles are often everyone else's success.
In this case, they are starting something that is closer to video games than actually role-playing games. So it's not the same thing anymore, I guess. I don't know.
That's kind of already happened a bit with the virtual tabletops. I will always prefer theatre of the mind, just describing to people that over miniatures. But sometimes it has utility, and it is nice to be able to link up over the internet to play with people, because certainly as you get older, your schedules clash and it's harder and harder to get a group together. And so it's nice to have the option. And COVID normalized it, as same as it's normalized working from home for a lot of people. And I think that's a silver lining to what we've all been through, I think.
Well, we use we only play online because people don't have no time for getting together, but we use Zoom, never any, not Roll20 or whatever. I prefer this, and I think it's closer to the experience of playing with real people in real space.
Yeah, that's the other advantage
and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, there's always been play by text over like IRC or by email or whatever, but yeah, being able to see someone and get all those little visual cues and so on. It's closer to meeting in person. I do still meet my face-to-face group about every month and a half, except when I was ill, obviously. So yeah, I still get my face-to-face time, and that's still good. But when you don't see people for a long time, you waste a lot of time socializing. Maybe waste isn't the right word, but yeah, catching up and so on takes a big chunk out of the time that you would be there to play. So
about those games you are going to run, have you scheduled anything?
I haven't scheduled anything. That would be a mistake. I need to get these last few things that I owe people out of the way. I still want to take some time just to relax and not do anything. Probably just be a week or two until I get antsy. And then I will start looking at my bookcase of doom and deciding which games to try and organize. So follow me on social media if you might want to get in on a game, but keep in mind I'm in the UK and on UK time.
Yeah, that's a problem that we have, because when sometimes you want to play with people, but yeah, our
yeah.
not people on the US.
With Tabletopless, I'm regularly up until 5 a.m. And doing that more than one night a week. No, I'm not doing it.
We're too old for that.
Yeah.
We have another question from Griffith here asking, what are the chances of getting you over at a convention in the USA?
Slim. I hate to travel, especially internationally, and especially since Brexit, because now it's just a whole pain in the ass even to go to mainland Europe. I have been to the US. I did attend a small regional convention in Virginia a few years ago, but not there as like a featured speaker or to sell anything. It was on when we turned up. I was supposed to go to Gen Con US that year, but the bookings with the hotel fucked up and we had to cancel last minute, which is why I ended up in Virginia. I used to go to IndieCon over here in the UK. I used to go to Dragon Meet here in the UK. And back in the day, I used to go to Euro Games Fair and Euro Gen Con. I haven't wanted really to go to conventions for a while because the atmosphere at conventions has become oppressive. There's more and more rules. There's anti-harassment policies that aren't actually anything to do with anti-harassment. There's increased censorship and you just feel like you're being watched all the time. And the kind of games that I like to run tend to be quite adult or horrific. And I look at what's happened to other games masters at things like UK Expo, Games Expo, and I don't want to go through that. I've been cancelled enough times. I don't want to go through it again. And I know not every American convention is like that, but a lot of them are worse than the UK conventions. I think the last Dragon Meet I went to, we looked through their policy and then went round the trade hall. And I'm not kidding. If they had been applying those rules as written to everyone in there, about 80% of the stalls wouldn't have been able to be there because they had products that showed violence or mildly titillating. Yeah, and if they had applied that policy, there would be no convention. And all it takes is one person to be a dick, and you're just screwed. So
we
Slim
cannot say anything at the time, right? And then everything goes well at the time, but then the next day someone decides, I don't like this guy. I'm gonna go.
Yeah. I might test the waters just going to sell stuff and not to run games, because that's low risk. So I might try going to UK Games Expo. That's up in Birmingham. One year I want to get over to the Finnish convention, Roppacon, because I speak a little bit of Finnish. And I want to brush up on that. And it's also interesting. I'm really interested in that sort of Scandinavian strand of role playing.
Since you mentioned that, the fact that you stopped going to conventions, how did that hurt your business, and how much did it hurt?
I have done well at conventions in the past, but it was getting less and less effective. I think because most of the conventions have diversified, so they're not just role-playing conventions. You end up with a lot of card game tournaments, a lot of video games are starting to creep in, running events at these conventions. So you get a lot more of this more sort of general geek crowd, which means they're not necessarily as interested in your particular niche. So I wasn't making as much money, which made it easier to decide not to go. And prices have been going up. I don't know whether that's still the case, because a lot of these places will have lost convention business during COVID. So they might be a bit more willing to keep their prices low and so on. But I haven't really looked into it. I will probably try and get back to some UK cons just to feel out how things are, but just to sell, not really to participate unless there's a panel or something they want me on.
Yeah, running the games would be probably the riskiest part.
Yeah, I don't want to take the risk. And it's sad, because I like meeting new people and getting to know them over a game. But it's even if you mark your game as adult, you make it explicit beforehand what it's all about. I mean, sometimes that will be against convention policy, and sometimes it just doesn't seem to matter, and you can still get in trouble.
That's the thing with all this consent and safety. It looks like the rules don't really work. So you don't know
conventions and clubs and game stores that allow gaming, often now they are mandating that you must use safety tools. And I don't want to play with anybody who would feel the need to use safety tools.
Have you run something in local game stores there?
But we don't really have any anymore. So there's still
the place where you live.
It's still SDVM games in Aldershot, but that's not easy to get to from where I am. Leisure Games is in London. I don't think they have games on site. There's Noble Knight, I think they're still called, in Reading, but they're mostly board games these days. Maybe some miniatures battle games. So there isn't really anywhere. And the nearest game club is in Salisbury as well, which, yeah, I don't like to travel.
Yeah, I don't think we don't even have gaming clubs here. Well, we have
there are people.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. Perhaps there are some, but it's just small stuff. Of course, this is everything is small here.
Yeah,
even the people, small-minded at least.
Okay, yeah, we have
I see that Griffith
he's on fire. He's also complaining about us that we don't invite him to play. That's because he has a US.
We should invite Alec. Well, let's invite him.
Yeah, let's invite him. So we invited. You're going to run the one shot for the Orphan Loves one of these days. Okay. So I heard.
So that's it. Yeah. Orphan Loves then.
Yes. So Griffith is asking what are the chances of being invited to a UK con for a movie director, game designer. I think he's talking about himself. Yeah.
You'd have to ask the convention runners. I mean, that would be the other option, would be to start a convention. But I've seen what that does to people.
Yeah, that'll be a lot of work and a lot of stress.
Yeah, I used to run a couple of big LARP events, and that was enough. So we ran one outdoors, and it was the height of summer, and everything was tinder dry. And everyone was supposed to have gone to bed, and I was laying in my tent, and I just suddenly woke up with this feeling. And I looked at the tent, and there were a bunch of drunk gamers heading into the tinder dry forest with tiki torches. I was like, no, no, let's not cause a forest fire.
So I know that you are going to take it easy, but when you go back to game design, do you have any plan that you think that will be the most likely to?
I think the gazetteers for Aerotech will be the main sort of thing, because I've been neglecting that for too long, and it's not fair to the group. Otherwise, a third edition of Blood, maybe. I've got the system worked out. I just need to put it in human language for people to read. But that's something I'd like to do. Second editions of some of my stuff would probably be what I would be looking to doing, as my ideas on game design, and I think my skill at writing has improved since those early games, and a lot of them deserve a second look.
When you say earlier, really, what, 10 years old?
Yeah, older in some cases. When did I go full time? 2005 I went full time, and I had a couple of things out before that, part time. So yeah, nearly 20 years ago, some of them.
Okay. So are those were those released by Postmortem, or you have some?
Well, most of the stuff I did for other companies I can't do anything with. But things like 45 Psychobilly Retropocalypse could do with another look. Maybe Agents of Swing isn't that old really, but it might be worth a second look, update. Though I don't like the newer Fate rules, so maybe I don't want to update that. One of my very first games, Cloak of Steel, was a fantasy mecha game that I kind of crowbarred into third edition because that felt like the right thing to do at the time. And it was financially, but that deserves another look. And I still have rights to, there was a French translation of that one, and the artwork they did was gorgeous, and I have rights to use that artwork. So it's just kind of lying there, not being used at the moment. So that's a possibility.
That's the advantage of having a portfolio to work on.
But yeah.
Yeah, I haven't still played Agents of Swing. I don't really like the Fate rules. That's the problem. Maybe
I used,
but not the rules.
yeah, I used the version from Star Blazer Adventures and others that Cubicle 7 put out back in the day. So it's a little bit more granular, and it does suit the genre very well, I think.
Yeah, it makes sense for an Agents, but not really an action game. Well, an action game, but
Yes,
yeah,
stuff like James Bond is just larger than life.
Right.
So yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah, we don't have any more questions. Any more questions? Just comments, and a lot of people they don't like. Yeah, nobody likes safety tools. They're better. They will be expelled from the channel.
What's wrong with being an adult and just saying, hold on, I'm not that comfortable with this. I don't think this game is for me. You guys have fun. What's so wrong? What's so bad about that?
So you're running a game called Arachnophobia, and I want to play this game. By the way, I'm arachnophobic, so you're gonna have to take the spiders away from the game.
You okay with scorpions? No.
Kind of boring that, and it keeps popping up, and they're always finding some problems.
It just gets more and more absurd all the time. What bugs me as someone who's kinky is that they keep referring to BDSM checklists and things. Well, at the gaming table, I'm not putting my genitals or anything else inside you. We don't need the same level of consent and worry.
I'm not kinky, but I agree with that.
So it's pointless.
Weird.
But
well, the other thing that came up now is they're trying to say, oh, role-playing games can be therapy. Well, okay, they can be therapeutic. I certainly agree, and they're brilliant for people with autism or otherwise on the spectrum, because it's a structured environment in which you can learn to socialize. But if you're going to make me into your therapist, then I'm not going to allow you to use safety tools, because exposure therapy is what I recommend. So you can have one or the other.
I'm not a therapist, so don't expect me to provide therapy. I'm not a licensed therapist. You don't want to do that. I'm not going to roll your dramas for you.
Just don't ask people about their mothers while you're playing Blade Runner.
Exactly.
The people who are playing horror games seem to be the ones that are more inclined to that, treating the game as a kind of therapy, facing their fears
And the kinkiness, because I think that horror and BDSM go hand in hand.
I don't know why.
Well, facing your fears and experiencing discomfort in a safe situation, that is genuinely therapeutic, and that is something that games could be good for. But if you have all your triggers and you have your X card, you're never going to learn that tolerance and become more resilient. And I'm not your fucking therapist.
Yeah, that's all true. It's just a lunatic. What? You're not placing. Oh, okay.
You're not placing your genitals on the table.
No, even in tabletopless, nobody needs to see me naked. No, watch the girls.
There are genitals there,
but not on the table. Well, they can be.
Well, I don't know. I've never seen it. Are there tables there? I don't know.
Yeah, running the genie lamp is not a fun experience. Yeah, it's weird. Oh, the cat is coming back again.
Any more questions?
No, we don't have any more questions here. I'm gonna let's ask people if they have any more questions.
I don't have any more questions.
I don't feel like discussing too much the usual subjects.
The woke stuff.
Yeah, no, I'm tired of that shit.
Yeah.
There's no point.
Last time we talked a lot about stuff. Well, there's nothing new right now.
Yeah, it's always the same
Just
thing.
keep repeating the same things.
Over and
what
over
was the
again.
last thing that turned to be
Something
offensive? Barbarians, right?
Yeah, I think it was barbarians. They didn't like the.
Oh, and I also like the DM crisis in 5e.
Yeah, and race, not changing species. Yeah, those were the last few things.
Yeah, it's not fun anymore.
No, it's starting to be always the same thing.
Yeah. Well, people can check my channel if they want to see me rant about those subjects.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, we do the videos on the right time when things start erupting.
We have nine people saying 3 of my favorite people in the world. Thank you. And we are ready to leave. Sorry. You can watch the replay.
Did we just arrive?
Yeah, I think so, because he just left a comment now.
Well, maybe he's got a question.
Yeah, maybe he has a question. So
considering he's missed everything. So
yeah,
well, internet
is
also
going away. So let's see. Let's give some time to that was one of the days that we were doing a stream and someone joined and was like, "Oh, are you?" And we were leaving. Why are you leaving?
Well, this time there was lots of people here. Not always.
Yeah, especially because of the time.
Yeah, this is a good time for us, but in the
Not
US,
for people in
I
the
don't know.
US.
It depends on where they are, but in most places they are.
Yeah, it's getting close to Christmas, so some of the Yanks probably have some time off.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Not that they get much time off compared to us glorious superior Europeans.
Okay, no, yeah, has been listening, right? We've been working, so
we're not expelling him.
Yeah, we're not expelling him. I always feel if someone complains, it's like we need to at least say, okay,
well,
we are going to leave. And that's the part I'm not used to with streaming.
We just started with.
But it's easier for interviews because people just join the chat and it doesn't work for us.
And they can come up with more interesting questions.
Exactly.
Probably. Different perspective, at least. Griffith is saying something about appreciating Jim's thoughts on gaming, and in this case about AI as well. And I thought
he's apologizing for not opening Whitechester yet.
Yeah, well, I haven't opened it
exactly.
Because I haven't got it yet. But there's some problem here, but probably because it's Christmas. I had a lot of orders that haven't arrived, and well, that's one of those. Not quite an order. I don't know when it was shipped.
I would have to find your particular order in the back system. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think they print in Spain for your area. So
Then it takes a lot of time because it's from Lulu, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Then it's taking a lot of time.
Is it
Normally
Spain? I thought it was from France.
They use different printers
Yeah.
all over the world, so it's hard to know.
Okay, so we have a question. We have a question, a final question. Well, Judd is saying that Grimm needs to make a game based on his astral projecting detective lady, but that's not the question. Just the comment. We have a question from Doodle Squatch. If you have an overarching philosophy when it comes to game design or a specific process, so a serious question.
Okay, to end on. So I talked earlier about plausibility. I think that is my main sort of guiding principle when designing a game overall. But what's plausible also changes according to genre. So if you're writing a high octane James Bond style game, then what is plausible is different to if you're writing extremely hardcore, hard sci-fi or alternate history that's really deeply rooted in the history, and that's the point of it. But this idea of plausibility just allows you a little bit of wiggle room either side of where you're aiming. So that's an important part of my design process and idea, I guess. I think system matters. That has been an unfashionable idea for some time. But I think, a bad GM will always be a bad GM. A good GM will always be a good GM, no matter what system you're using for whatever game that you're doing. But your chances of getting a good game out of anyone are improved when the setting and the system work synergistically together to do something, which is why I think Fate was good for the Spy-Fi game, or my very, very simple D6 based system was good for Invaders and Urban Fairy, because those are light, and the idea was that they're simple enough you can play them while you're drunk. was the basic idea behind those. So I think system matters and reinforces genre emulation, those sorts of things. You feel free to have a different idea, but that's what I think. And my process, I come up with an idea, I brainstorm it as much as I can think. I try and consume media that is related, but not necessarily exactly what I'm trying to do, because I don't want to directly copy ideas. I just want to take inspiration. And then when it comes to writing, I form a skeleton of the whole book, like titles, headers, subheadings, and little notes here and there. Okay, this needs to go here, this needs to go here, this needs to go here. I need to talk about that. Then I'll review that several times, make sure I've covered all my bases, and then I start to fill in the skeleton. The advantage of doing that way is everything that you want to put in the book, but you don't have to write it in order. You can go and do one bit and go back and do another, and you've got the constant capability to change and add or remove things as you go through. So that's part of the process. Once it's written, I put it through Grammarly, which is advanced spelling and grammar checking software. It's good, but it's not quite good enough. So you still have to be on your toes and paying attention when you're using it. And then I put it all through text-to-speech, and I listen to it, because that gives you the cadence. And you're often blind to your own mistakes in grammar and spelling, and you put in the wrong word here and you forget about it. You often can't see that even when you read it back yourself. So if you put it through speech software, that will just mechanically follow what you've written. And so you notice. That's all because I can't really afford a proper editor, but that's a good way of doing it. And then I put it into layout software and put everything together. I usually commission the art when I finish the draft, so there's a lead time. So I think that's about it.
So I learned that I'm doing almost everything wrong.
Well, everyone's got their own way of doing things.
That's right.
Yeah. So that's just
Oh,
my way.
I think that's interesting. The text-to-speech software. What do you use for that?
I used to use a program called Read Please. There's a free like plugin for your web browsers now called Speechify. You have to pay for some of the voices and things, but it's the free one's good enough. And then if you just exporting to PDF is probably the best way to do it, and then you just tell it to read the text, and you just lay back and listen and try not to fall asleep.
Yeah, it may be boring. Yeah, that's true. I tried Speechify for something, but I didn't know it did that kind of thing for free. I thought it was paid. But yeah, okay, they have some voices that aren't necessarily good, but
yeah, other software is available
or something. Yeah,
You probably use it
just for
something for game sessions.
yeah, I did some videos for game sessions. That's probably that. So they're not really a question, but Ninth Octopus said that some of the stories in Pulp Nova would be great scenarios or modules.
Yeah, I guess. You just reminded me. I did want to do like I don't know what you'd call it, rocket punk, which would be similar to the Ace Slam story in that sort of taking cues from Lensman, Flash Gordon, and so on, but treating it plausibly and somewhat cynically is how I would put it.
Okay, so no more questions, and I have no more questions, unless you have some questions.
No, I don't have any
You don't have
questions.
questions. Okay, so let's feed the cats because they're
The kids are getting
growing.
hungry.
They are planning something.
They are looking at us with a very pissed off look.
I know the look.
Okay, Jim, thank you for coming second time here to our small channel, and have a nice rest.
Yeah.
You need to rest, and
And good luck with Leicester.
yeah, and good luck with
Thank you. Hopefully this will help a little. Yeah. And fans, tell people about it.
Exactly, share. That's always sharing is caring.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you guys for listening.
And thank you for asking questions and
exactly and doing
our
your job
job
for us.